Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. Stories of service.
Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. My name's Rusty, and today with us we have Sam. Now, Sam was a corrections officer in Alice Springs for over 6 years, so he's coming to talk to us about his time as a corrections officer. So welcome to the podcast, Sam.
Thank you.
So what got you into wanting to be a corrections officer? How do you get down that path?
Easy answer's my dad, funnily enough. He was out there for, I think, 7 years before I started. I'd just been banging around working in workshops and doing private security and swinging spanners and waiting at tables, just sort of bits and pieces, as you do when you leave school and you sort of don't have a set career path, you don't take a trade route. So it was kind of like a career option. It wasn't my first thought. No one leaves school and thinks I'm going to go work in a jail. Very few people think that. He harassed me for a couple of years and then I kind of did it on a whim. Just went down to the fitness testing one day, passed, did a few interviews and got in. So it was kind of a fluke, bit of family pressure.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about that selection process and what that entailed? I know it's probably maybe changed a little bit now, but just to give everyone kind of a little sneak peek of what you can expect.
Yeah, where we are, obviously, it's still government run. It's not private. So I know there's ones on the coast that are private, but the government selection process for us up here is still relatively standard. So do your online expression of interest when you submit your experience and your CVs and your requirements that you have to show proof of. You'll go to an initial fitness testing day. The current fitness assessment isn't horrendous, but it's a timed assessment. So it's a 5-minute total time period. You do a 100-metre circuit run followed by 10 step-ups just onto a standard size bridge step. You repeat that 5 times. So 5 intervals of 100, 5 sets of 10 steps. You'll then go into 10 punches, 5 left, 5 right, 10 kicks, 5 left, 5 right, 10 modified burpees. So it's kind of like a hand release push-up, chest to the floor, hands off the ground, back up to your feet again. You'll then grab a simulated dummy drag. We just used a large boxing bag, weighed about 60 kilos. Pick that up, get it to your chest, drag it back 15 metres, drop it. Then you've got to call code blue twice into a radio. So you've got 5 minutes to do that. So it's a consecutive timed event. It's not done segmentally. They used to do segmented testing where you'd have like, how many push-ups you could do, how many sit-ups you could do, but found that fitness level didn't translate into functional capability. So this is meant to simulate a response to a riotous event or incident. I think it was taken from Queensland Corrections initially. It was one of their specialist responses, and it simulates the requirement to run down prison blocks, run upstairs, go into a cell, deal with an incident, then drag an officer out. That's effectively what it replicates. Most people with minimal training can do that. It's just those that come from very sedent jobs that don't actually do any physical training do tend to struggle. So we find that you'd probably say if 20 people applied, maybe 15 would make it through with no issue. The other 5 are typically people that have had kids and gone into a desk job and just don't keep themselves active.
Yeah, gotcha. So once you finish that, so you've got your online testing, like you said, and I'm assuming that's like an aptitude test and psychometric testing?
Yep, and that's relatively standard across most jobs these days. Psychometric and aptitude is it's not extremely hard for the entry level for corrections. You'll do the typical psychometric assessment. I think that's one of those 300 to 500 question ones where I'll obviously ask you the same question 10 different ways to see if you're fabricating or falsifying it, but it's generally based around your morals and principles. So less attention paid to things like math. Numeracy and literacy do play a role, obviously, but it's more along what your moral and ethical judgments are on things and how you think people behave and what's right and wrong and what's justice and what's not justice. And they try to get a gauge on what your mental state is relevant to that because of obviously what you're exposed to on the job.
So how long did that process take for you from when you applied to when you kind of got in?
We took, I think it was about 4 months from when I applied to when we got in.
Quite a long process.
Yeah, it's gotten a bit faster in recent years, obviously with the recruitment drives. They're better. They're more proficient. Back then it wasn't such a scary concept of being so short-staffed obviously, but nowadays obviously the government's putting a lot more money and effort into recruitment and trying to keep the staffing levels up. So they're running, pretty much back-to-back courses.
And when you first got into the role, are you assigned like a mentor to work with, or are you considered good to go by yourself?
When you graduate, you're effectively a fully qualified officer. So or gazetted if you want to call it. So you don't have any rank on your slides or anything. You're just a correctional officer, but you're not referred to as a trainee. You're just a correctional officer. So you have all the legislative capabilities of a normal officer. So anyone that's been there for 10 years or a week, same capability. You don't have to be shadowed or have your hand held. So you can be running blocks, doing escorts, manning the front gate, controlling the cameras and the gates from the tower. Like, you can be doing all of that as a 1 week officer. You do have a peer support mentor type network, but the issue was when I started, and I know it's been in recent years too, a lot of people are leaving the profession. So a lot of guys that have been in there for 10, 15, 20 plus years are just over it, just with work, burnout, stresses, the job, politics, anything to the effect, something will just trigger them to say, no, I've done my time, I need to get out of here and enjoy myself. So there's less and less of a support network, and it's becoming that real standardized pyramid effect now. You've got a whole heap of juniors, and as you go up the track, it's getting very thin with your seniority. And not just that, the guys that do have experience may not be the most capable of teaching or mentoring. Like, people are good at their jobs, don't get me wrong. I've worked with plenty of lads that are awesome at their job, that will back you up any day of the week, and they are proficient. Come to teaching somebody, they might not be able to communicate, or they might not be as capable of guiding someone because they know what they're doing, but communicating what they're doing and why they're doing it is difficult for them. So that's another challenge, unfortunately.
Yeah, gotcha. Can you tell me what was your first experiences walking in and doing these, your first escort by yourself, or the first few days as a corrections officer by yourself? Can you talk me through how you felt?
Definitely nervous. Most everybody's nervous. Being a legacy as well, our course was interesting. We had four of us out of the 18 had immediate family members in the prison who'd been there for quite a while. So we were almost held to an even higher standard because we knew what was expected. The assumption was we knew what was expected, but for everybody walking in, it's that first day when you go in and you kit up and you grab your cuffs, your gas, get your baton, grab your keys, and we're talking the old chub, like the big old English keys. You don't use swap. Proper Victorian jail sort of setup. You're walking around with all that gear on, throw your radio on, and go forth and prosper into the block. And I was in a block referred to as golf block, medium to high security. So initial starting point for people, they moved down there as a downgraded in security ratings. The block, I don't know, between 140 and 190 prisoners on any given day, depending on how it runs. Nowadays, obviously, they're full. But it was interesting walking in when you look at the staffing, and it's a very hard thing to convey walking into a block to do a muster. And a muster is done multiple times throughout the day. The call goes over the PA system, the loudspeaker. The prisoners all line up in order, so they're set up so they can be roll called, and you'll effectively stand in the middle. And when you're standing there and it's you, another blocky, maybe the senior, and you'll have somebody on the door as security. So on a short day, you'll have 3. On a good day, you might have 4 or 5.
So you're severely outnumbered.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like in one block, because the block's segregated as well. So one block could be 75 to 85 in golf block, and then out in the other sectors, it might be 60 odd. But you're still looking at having 3 officers minimum to walk through the door and do it. So first time I walked in, obviously they all know you're brand new. You've got no rank slides on. They've never seen you before. They're not stupid. They know. Yep. They know more than we do about the system.
You're in their house right now. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You're a visitor. You've got to prove that you know what you're doing. So it was that nervous anticipation going to walk in, and then going in there, and then the feeling of all the eyes on you. And when you're in the middle, that realization of all that training you've done, where they talk about, don't let yourself get surrounded and always have an exit to your back, and thinking about empty-handed tactics and how you'd respond and what you do if a circumstance did occur and what sort of force you'd have to use. And you've obviously been running these scenarios in your head when you're in training. You're like, if a guy did this, I'd do this. If he did this, I'd do that. You're like, yeah, I'm confident. You walk in there and you think to yourself, if these guys wanted to, we're done. Like,
there's
we
nothing
are.
You could do.
No, God no. Come hell or high water. There's no one that is going to stop anything happening immediately. And I think that was the realization I had on it was my second or third shift. I walked in and it was a little bit tense. There was a bit of animosity for some reason. There was an internal thing between a couple of guys, and the block had been a bit unsettled. And at the time I didn't know, because I hadn't developed that intuitive line yet, but down the track, it's obviously your gut. You get that vibe, you get that feeling, and you can walk into a block and you sort of go, yeah, nah, we're not doing this. They can all just move in and we'll come in later, or we'll get a couple of other guys down, then we'll go in. That took me a couple of years to develop that gut feeling, or that ability to look at a block, and that was just that reading people, reading situations, knowing the crims as well, knowing them personally. So someone that's usually happy would be grumpy, or somebody that was usually loud was quiet, and you look at it and you go, well, what's going on? Like, something must be happening because they've changed, or the vibe in the block has changed. Back then I didn't know it, obviously, but I just felt anxious and nervous and scared.
Yeah. So walking in, when you said the eyes were all on you, especially in those first few days, how do you build rapport with these inmates, with these people?
Talking. Honestly, a lot of it talking. So as a block officer, you're sort of designated as, I don't know if you're going to call it, say like you're a big brother or a babysitter or a parent or whatever kind of role you want to play it as. But your job is to assist and support the lads with what they need. So obviously, like, we do their musters, make sure they're counted, make sure they've all got a bed, they've got clothing, they're fed, they get to medical, any prisoner request forms. So there's a multitude of paperwork. There are so many forms, it's not funny. But if they want to do, say, a probation program like education, or family violence program, safe, sober, strong, anything like that. So they'd fill that paperwork out, we'd get it, we'd process it to get it through. General request forms. So, if they wanted to move cells or get the security rating changed, find out about their court, wanted to try to talk to a lawyer, like anything like that, we would facilitate or assist in facilitating. Their prisoner buys, so like their commissary type buys, we would obviously process that and sort that out for them as well. And any other underlying issues they had in the block, we were their initial contact. So they kind of had to go through us to get things done and to get stuff sorted. So you had to communicate. So if you did your job well, they built this mentality that if I need something, I can go to my blockie. So you just refer to as a blockie if you're a block officer, first point of contact. And that was one of our other things that we learned, is they'd always come to us. So if I wasn't their block officer, if I was just an assistant officer, they'd be coming asking me for stuff because I knew, expecting me to do it. But you're meant to direct them to the block officer to assist them in gaining control of the block and building that rapport. So they sort of learn they've got that focal point, and they'll stop annoying other people. We call it officer shopping. If their block officer wasn't going to do it for them, they'd go and ask somebody else, and they'd play that whole, oh, no, he told me to come and talk to you card. You're like, well, no, that's not the rule.
So like the kids play between mum and dad, when mum says no and they go to dad. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So it's building that respect, I guess, with the people that are in there as well. That probably goes a long way.
Definitely, and it's a time served thing too. So like when I'd finished up, I'd done a couple of years as a senior as well. So the senior's a 3 stripes, so it'd be equivalent to like a sergeant. So I was a senior at golf block for a couple of years prior to finishing up, and that gets you to a different level again, because you will say the block officer will fix things, but the crims in the block know that the block officer's paperwork goes to the senior, and the senior has to co-sign it and approve it to then be processed. So then they would figure out that, well, if this block officer doesn't know, or I didn't get it, I'm just going to go talk straight to that senior while he stands there. So as a senior, I would try and be present to observe musters and observe unlocks and be in the block and watch what was going on, or see if. So there's certain little things. It sounds petty, but stuff like we wouldn't let guys have their shirts off. They had to have a shirt on more of the block because we couldn't differentiate on the cameras, and obviously all these blocks have got cameras in them. So if someone in the control tower is seeing guys walking around without a shirt on, their first thought is someone's about to go and punch on. So we would have very strict rules around stuff like that. So they might have their shirt off because it's hot and they're doing training. They're doing like a calisthenics or running around in the courtyard. They're not even meant to run. So no running, no shirts off, no hygiene tools when we haven't issued them. So there's no reason for them to ever look like they're fighting unless they're actually fighting. So little things like that might seem petty, but it was because we had such a large volume of prisoners that we had to have oversight on across all the blocks, and you had limited staff doing it. So as a senior, I'd be in there, and if I saw someone doing it, or even shoes, wear shoes during around the block walk.
Is there any memorable moments or experiences we can talk about within your job as a corrections officer?
Probably right at the start. I think it was probably 3 months in, and I had a death in custody. I remember sitting there and I was doing a shift in the management zone, so it's middle security, and it's quite an open sector. So you've got like buildings plotted around the place. So you've got blocks of correction. So you've got 4 primary blocks and then a 5th one in the back corner. And there's a huge open sort of space in the middle. And we'd let one block out at a time, obviously for numbers, because these blocks go up to 65. So you'd effectively open the front door, let them out, and they get to mill around and go out in the grass and kick the ball and run around the yard and just do stuff. They would get that out of block time. So a particular day we're doing this, and someone came over and was yelling out from the block in the back corner that a prisoner had collapsed. He passed out. So they know the codes, obviously. This block in particular housed a lot of life sentence long-term prisoners, manslaughter, murder. So they start yelling out code blue, which is medical. So they're yelling out code blue, code blue. We're not allowed to question them. They yell it, we do it. So we've gone code blue on the radio. I've turned around to one of my other offsiders that had just started the course with me as well. And we've both run, unlocked the door, run in. And I remember running into the block, and came to the block door, right-hand side, and there was a pool table. So this block is like I said, long-term lifers block. They've got certain things that a lot of other guys don't have. So they had a pool table. And there was a guy on the floor between the wall and the pool table. I remember running over, and he's on the floor, and he's gagging and gasping and doing what he does on the floor. And I was trying to get in there to get to him, but there wasn't much space. And it was funny looking back on it on the footage, but a couple of the croons came around and helped me push this full-size pool table away from him, so we had room on the floor. One of them was trying to hold him steady in the recovery position, and then as the other officers came in behind us, they've corralled them into the median chute where the accommodation is and locked that central door and covered the window so that we were secured in there. Probably within 60 seconds, the breathing sort of went from gagged, gargling, raspy to just nothing, just stopped. So we pretty much put him on his back, and then between me and my offsider started CPR. I think this was a Saturday from memory. All things told, by the time paramedics rocked up, they had trouble getting a line in. So I think they'd tried to, the central line in the leg. I can't remember what they called it, but they went, let's say it's memory. Yeah, because I was banging around the leg. They were trying to do a line down there. One of the other paramedics couldn't get an intubation line down his throat, so they asked us to bag and CPR while they tried to muck around doing other stuff. So I think all things told, it was just over an hour of CPR. They ended up calling it just after an hour. It just wasn't, there was nothing there. The coronial was done, and it was almost a year to the day that the findings came out. Turned out that he had severe underlying cardiac issues, and corrections got praised for our response. But it was one of those things of, would it have been different if we had done better or done anything differently starting off? Like everyone trains for CPR, but very few people outside the role of obviously paramedics and medical staff actually have to do it. So we didn't know if we did well or not until that coronial. We sort of sat there, and it's like everyone said, "Oh, you did a good job." It's like, yeah, but did we do a good job?
You can only do the best you can do with what you have, and that you're never going to rise to the level of expectation. You're always going to fall to the level of your training. And it is
exactly
what it is.
We graduated the college in June, and this is in August, so it was very shortly after. We were still learning how to turn keys indoors and what our safety protocols were, let alone running into a block and having to do CPR someone on the weekend. So
that's scary for anyone, man. And that can happen to anyone, anytime on the street. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyone that has to respond to something like that I've been with the ambulance service for seven years, and I've talked a lot of people through doing CPR. I've never done it in person.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's people that are in the medical industry like EMDs, and we talk people through it every day, and yeah, never done it on a person myself. So, and I hope I never. Yeah, I hope I never have to, dude. There was also something else that you were involved in that same year. I believe it was a riot.
Yeah. So we had we call it sustained riotous incident, but yeah. So just after Christmas of that year, we had an incident in the block regarding prisoners not being happy with their conditions, because obviously being a very old prison, it's not air conditioned. Prison being 30 plus years old at the time wasn't factored into the requirements for it to be air conditioned. obviously now with the temperatures getting hotter, it's one of those things I'll have to consider whether they renovate or build a new facility. That's a whole different thing for politics. That's above our pay grade, obviously. But at the time, that time of year in Alice Springs, obviously it's very hot. Prisoners effectively did not want to move into their cells to be locked down, turned into them arming up with bits and pieces from the block, so pulling fixtures out of cells and refusing to move in. So officers had to get riot gear on and effectively sort of wait it out. There hadn't been a riot in over a decade prior to that. So training and equipment and proficiency weren't really there. It was one of those things of, as you said with CPR, people might train for it, but you never have to use it, so you're not so confident. You do a day of riot training in college, but short of that, you never really apply the principles of riot training in the job. And it had been, like I said, over a decade. So there were very few officers who'd ever put riot gear on or been engaged in a riot that were actually on that day or even employed in the centre. So that incident started obviously in the afternoon when they were getting locked down, and then it rolled through to later that evening. So there was no extraneous damage. It was quite low impact. It was more of a standoff, though. There was not that much in the way of violence, projected violence. A little bit of throwing of stuff, but it was definitely, as I said at the start, it was definitely that realisation that if the guys wanted to kick off, they'd kick off. And if you were in the block when that happened, 80 prisoners, because we're obviously behind locked grills and doors, so you know that they physically cannot reach you. So your level of anxiety or fear isn't really that high. If you're in riot gear with a shield behind the door, they're not getting you. So it was the senior members, the executive officers, that made a few little concessional deals to get them to agree to move in. A little bit of disciplinary stuff around the ringleaders, but wasn't overly violent, wasn't overly volatile. It was quite docile in relation to that. And obviously, since then, there's been other much more volatile incidences. And looking back career-wise, that was sort of the start where everything escalated to the points in recent years.
Gotcha.
Definitely scary, that.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being involved in something like that. And it's hard, man. Back when I was locksmithing, we used to do a lot of the stuff at the prisons, and man, I hated being there just to do the locks. Like, it was a pain in the ass. You got to go in the sally pod, sign in, go there, put the code in, get the key, get the toolbox that's owned by the corrections.
Yep.
Count everything. It's like, oh man, I couldn't imagine just for me working there. That just definitely not my cup of tea. Definitely.
Oh, it's good fun.
I don't know how you guys do it, eh?
Oh, it's fun. It's the people you work with. It's definitely the people you work with.
And it'd be very interesting, I think, working there, especially talking to the people from like all the walks of life that are in prison. I guess some of them are there because they're really bad dudes, and you got some of them there because they don't know anything else, or they got no choice. You know what I mean? People that just can't afford to eat, so they got to steal. People that are just brought up in a family where that's just the norm. Yep. I mean, you do the tour of the Fanny Bay jail up here in Darwin, the old one. They said after Cyclone Tracy, more people came back to the prison and said that they were incarcerated there than they actually were, because people were after shelter, they were after food, they were after water.
Yep.
And I guess especially the people that have been in and out their whole life, they probably feel comfortable in there.
Yeah. And that comes back a lot to, as I said earlier, the whole, we build that rapport and that relationship, and like I said, call it a sibling or a parent type relationship if you want, but the lads know that we will help them out. We'll take care of them, but we'll also scold them or punish them if required within the confines of legislation. I'll add that in.
That's correct. You do the right thing, we'll look after you, but you got to act accordingly.
But you do the wrong thing, and you're not going to just get a slap on the wrist. You'll get put up the back into an isolation cell. You can lose your money, you can lose your property, your security rating can be jagged up depending on how severe it is. If you assault staff, you could be charged and have your sentencing extended. Plenty of stuff that we can do, that I've done as a senior, to try and correct people. And it's taken several years in some cases for some of these guys that I've met. There's like, say, 18-year-olds. And then by the time I see them again in their mid-20s, they might still push the line, but they actually have a bit of a switch there now where they know that if they do the wrong thing, there is a repercussion. If they do this stupid thing here, that they're going to get in trouble. They actually start to develop that. And unfortunately, it's almost like corrections, you kind of have to do that. Like, I get like correctional officer, it sounds like that's your job, but with the staffing and the capacity of the prisons as it is, You don't get that time to sit there and talk to them, like one-on-one. There's some that sometimes I would, don't get me wrong. So like on an escort or going to hospital or court or doing an education program, you get 10, 15 minutes here and there to talk, and you'll get to know them, where they're from, what they do, what they enjoy doing, who their family are. The kinship system means that you get to know who they're good with and also who they've got issues with. So you also start to learn the who's in the zoo and what's going on and the schoolyard dynamic. So that helps that rapport a lot. Also knowing why they're in and why they keep doing it. Like with the receptions in golf block, for example, our process was, everyone came in through reception. As you said, the Sally Port come through reception, they get processed, they get all the gear, they come down the golf block. We would then do an unclosed search again. So the standing rule was anybody entering or leaving the block, because it's maximum security, would have to have an unclosed search. So that would give you this buffer window of like 5 to 10 minutes with every crim as they came in individually with no one else around. There's 2 officers, 1 prisoner. So in that 5 to 10 minutes, you'd get to gauge and if it's a frequent flyer, if you want to call them that, or someone that keeps on doing it, recidivism, you'd sort of stop and you say, you just got out 3 months ago, didn't you? Yeah. So what are you doing back in again? Like kunga, ganja, bloody grog, breach, what? Dirty piss test. I'm like, breach, you on conditions, huh? Yeah, I was on conditions. What happened? Family came around and wanted to have a drink. And I'm like, well, fuck, you can say no to family. And he's like, yeah, no, but then they made me drink. They told me I got to drink. And I'm like, all right, so family pressure. Huge one. Huge issue we would see was family pressure.
Yep.
So it was fun. It was funny, but it's not funny. But you would get to know these guys so well that you could almost guess by sight what they'd be coming in for, because it would be the same thing again and again. And 90% of the time they'd state family pressure or kinship family pressure, like extended family. And even things around DVOs, people having non-contact DVOs, family rocking up with the ex-partner to a place where the other guy is, or girl, whoever's got the DVO. And they'd rock up to drink and the other person didn't know they were there. Police would come in attendance for something, see these 2 people in the same place, completely unrelated, take old mate that's breach and go lock them up. That would happen more often than not, and that's no one's fault. It's completely legal and technical breach of DVO, but just, old mate might be inside the house drinking, old love's out the front having a drink. They don't know that they're there. There's 50 people there. They don't know. So that was one that would happen. The other one would obviously be alcohol. Guys that do the alcohol, they'd get on the drink and there'd be a bit of jealousing or a bit of arguing or something would happen, and ag assault, bloke hits a woman in any sense, bang, immediate ag assault. He picks up a stick or a rock or anything, bang, ag assault. Like, just there's so many aggravations that occur, and a lot of it would just be impulsive in the moment. We were lucky in the sense that we didn't have to deal with these lads when they were high as a kite or absolutely off their faces drunk. We would get them after that initial period where they've had the bail refused, they've gone on a remand warrant, they come out, and in some cases I'd have these guys for 3 to 6 months, maybe up to 12 months for the lower level stuff, and other guys, once they're sentenced, might be doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So we had a really unique perspective on getting to know these people like we're in town at the pub having a drink. And that was one thing my dad taught me. He's talk to these guys like you're at the pub. Take away the beer, take away the nuts, talk to them the same way. Just talk. Just ask them how they're going, what they're doing, how they've been, who are they following the rugby, what's their training going like, what are they reading, what's their family doing, talk. And that was that big thing with the rapport, was that helped us gain that insight into how the guys were behaving and what was going on. And that was probably one of the reasons that a lot of us felt so safe walking inside those blocks, because you knew that you'd treated those guys with respect. They didn't have any warrantable reason to have a go at you. And even when we did discipline them, and don't get me wrong, I was involved, I think towards the end I had about 200 incidences in 6 years that I was involved in, but they were justified incidences. So that'd be prisoner on prisoner assaults, prisoner officer assaults, trafficking, contraband, anything to the effect, things that were actually required to be dealt with within the Correctional Services Act. So I would try and keep it as a last option to use any level of force or to remand somebody or reprimand somebody. But I wasn't above telling someone off. I'd play the dad card. So they come out of the block and say something stupid like they're talking on muster. You don't talk on muster. You're meant to be quiet for that 2 or 3 minutes just to show that level of respect and also to train them with a bit of discipline. But most of the time dealing with the lads would be bringing them out of the block. We had this thing called the line in golf block. So it was outside the block, away from everybody behind closed doors, and you didn't have an audience. So you would take away the aspect of showboating, and they're on their own outside, and then you'd go over there and obviously address them on the line afterwards and sort of say, it's not scolding. Yeah, so you would effectively just tell them off on the line what they're doing is wrong, why it's wrong, what you expect of them. And then you'd do that a couple of times if required. And then eventually you get to the point where you start looking at the punitive measures. And you're like, you keep doing this, you're going to get fined, or I'm going to rehouse you. Or if they had a job, like an internal employment job, you're going to lose your job. So that was also a part of the rapport building, because in some cases, these dudes did need it. They needed someone to tell them what they're doing wrong. They needed to see some sort of a repercussion for doing the wrong thing. As petty as it sounds, not tucking your shirt in. If you don't know how to tuck your shirt in, you're not going to do what you're told. And if you're not going to do what you're told, then what level do you stop at? You know, do you walk in front of a car? Do you beat your missus? Do you rob a shop? Do you steal a car? Like, if you've got no respect for authority and you're just displaying recalcitrant behaviour, you know, there is technically no limit. You'll just do whatever you want.
And that's respect for yourself as well, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
Looking how to look after yourself. And, you know, when you got respect for yourself, you get better self-esteem.
And we do that, haircut, shaving. So we had, you know, shaving regulations. So everyone had to be clean shaven. You had to have a certain length haircut. You couldn't have styled haircut. So that was a bit of a conformity thing, but it was also get blokes in that just looked scruffy as all hell. We're talking Ned Kelly, Albert Einstein looking people. And then they leave 6 months later, you know, clean, fresh, well-fed, lost some weight, got in shape, got their medical, did some education. You're sending them out much better than when they came back in. But then they'll come back in 6 months later, and because there hasn't been anyone there to sort of assist and guide and nurture it, they drop back off again. And that was unfortunately what we saw a lot of. We would do a lot of that fixing up and assisting to have them come back again to do it again. It was sad, but it was necessary, unfortunately. But that helps. That helps. I was walking through town yesterday and I ran into about half dozen blokes, and I haven't seen them in, 7 or 8 months. And walking along, and because I used to have a beard. So I walk through town now, clean shaven, and then they look and then, well, how you going, bloke? And keep walking. They go, hey, you're a boss. And I'm just like, yeah, how you going? They took them that second for the penny to drop. In any other jurisdiction, though, if you were to see a prisoner in town, people talk about like how you try and hide your identity because you're worried about retribution for what you've done inside the jail. These blokes will come up and they'll fist bump you, they'll shake your hand, tell you about their missus, tell you that they're getting a job, going to play for their bloody team, Kintor Hawks or Jabiru Bombers or whoever it is, and they're going back out community, you know, go Murajulu or Panya or what, you know, they were happy to talk to you. They were happy to see you and tell you that they're actually doing something, you know.
And that must feel really good for you as well to know that you've made a difference, man.
It's awesome. It's awesome, you know. But then the same thing is, you know, there's a 50-50 chance you're going to see them back inside the prison.
Yeah.
But they're not malicious about it. There's no malice in it. It's just, as you said, the normality, the social norm for some of these guys with what they've been brought up with, what they've seen their parents doing, or the absence of parents, or the extended family's acceptance of, you know, domestic violence or alcohol and drug abuse. It's just some of these guys have been brought up in that circumstance that it's almost like it's a perpetual and inescapable loop.
Yeah,
and that's one thing.
And it's hard to solve. A lot of these things is not an easy fix. It's going to take generations.
Yeah.
Generations to change. It's Absolutely. Such a hard thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, but one of my questions was going to be, what happens if you see someone that was in the prison outside, but you've brushed over that, which is really good. That was going to be one of my questions. But have you had anyone try to escape?
So I've not in town, but I've been rostered on twice at the prison in the main facility, and I've actually had to respond to it. So one of them was very early on. We were up in the industry sector, so the correctional industry services, so you like metal fab and woodwork, maintenance and that. Big open sector. It's got a reasonably medium security gate on it, and the gate's open when vehicles are coming in and out. And we happened to be up there doing a bin run, and it's one of those, you know, the prisoners will come out, they'll get all the rubbish from all the blocks, and there's this big conveyance of rubbish up the industries because that's where the skip bins are. So it's a monitored event. You'll have all the officers come up there and you'll bring the bins up, you'll pat all the prisoners into the industry sector, you'll pat them all out. In the interim, obviously, they go to the bins and empty it all out. And the pat search is mainly because industries obviously has, you know, edged weapons and steel and screws and bolts and stuff they could use to effect an escape or to make an improvised weapon. So we sort of stand in the central area and monitor people's movement in and out, but there's never enough staff to kind of corral the whole walkway. We happen to be about halfway through on a certain day, and my senior officer was looking over my shoulder and he's gone, I think we've got a runner. And I've looked over my shoulder and there's this young lad, early 20s, and he's running out the gate. So this is still inside the jail. He's not outside the jail. This is just an internal gate. He's running through the gate down the road, and this road sort of just like runs across the front of the internal run of the jail and goes straight past the gatehouse back towards Golf Block. It's good 250, 300 metres long. So he's running, and I've looked at my senior, and he's looked at me and gone, shit. So I've just started running. He started running with me, called the code on the radio for the escape, which then obviously means all the prisoners are going to be corralled and locked down and mustered. So I ended up running behind old mate. He had a good 50-metre head start. Like, I knew I wasn't going to catch him in boots with full gear on, but I was like, I'm just going to keep running. But as he was running, he kept on slowing down and swerving, and he's looking left and right, and he's trying to find some sort of an option on where to go, because all he's looking at to his right is just razor wire. Bundles and bundles of razor wire. Then looking left, he's going back into the jail. But all the doors are locked. All the gates are down. All the rollers are shut. There's no way out. So he just keeps running down the back towards Golf Block. He eventually gets to like the across dirt section on the far side of the jail, just yelling at him as we run. And then pretty much just said, get down, get down, get down. Pulled my cuffs out as I was running. And then he's eventually got on the floor, and I've sort of like slid in behind him, handcuffed him. Within 10 seconds, the officers that were in the nearby buildings have already started running out. So we all kind of converged at the same time. They've taken over, put him in the vehicle and escorted him back down. They've done all the processes of the lockdown, which is to do roll calls of all prisoners. You know, at that time we had like 600 and something prisoners in the jail, so everybody was mustered and roll called to confirm that he was the only one. When we asked him afterwards, he didn't have a plan. It was just opportunistic. He was pulling a wheelie bin, saw an open gate and ran. That's
so
it.
He didn't realise he was still within the facility, and there was actually no way out anyway.
He knew there was no way out, but he just didn't think about how he was going to get out. He just thought, I'm going to try and get out. And he'd been in for quite a while, so he knew that there was only one way in and out of the jail. So I think he was hoping that the door may have been open or a vehicle may have been coming in and out, because those roller doors have got that intrusion sensor on them. So if the door's up and you run through it, it'll stop rolling. If he had managed to get in the gatehouse, he might have been able to get his hands on something, which would have made it harder for us to effect securing him. But he didn't, and we're lucky that our processes were what they were. But I distinctly remember that day, because that was just after lunch, and I had just had a whole lamb snack pack, which I proceeded to throw up about 30 seconds after I caught him. Because I'd had that about 15 minutes earlier. I had just smashed an entire lamb snack pack. So sprinted a couple hundred meters in the middle of summer.
You were well fueled for the run.
Oh, well fueled is not the right word. I was running heavy. That was very early on. The most recent one was when they broke through a wall in the block, and that was just last year actually. It did make the news briefly, but they managed to chip the concrete around the cinder blocks of the actual accommodation wall and put a hole in the wall. This is at about 2 o'clock in the morning, mind you, and then get out of the crack in the wall and start running around inside the jail. And it was lucky, again, a lot of this comes down to staff. Staff that were down there on the night shift actually saw it on the cameras, notified the OIC, and then we've obviously gotten our gear, going outside, and then heard them running around the rooms in the jail at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we ended up calling the security teams in, which was going to take a good hour for them to be ready and get up. And we obviously notified the police. The police attended immediately, because obviously you've got shift on, fully kitted, ready to go. But before the police got there, I managed to effect one detainment on a young lad that we found when we were walking down the walkway. And then obviously we had probably 20 police there within 20 minutes. They flew out. They did really. It was amazing. It was an awesome response. It was very reassuring to know that we had bodies on the ground that would be able to assist us. That took probably a good hour after the start of the instance to actually get everybody there, corralled, have a smack, and then move in. But that was quite scary, because that prison's not designed to be moved around quickly by officers. So unless you're jumping fences, You've got to stop and unlock every door, lock every door, unlock every padlock and every gate, lock every padlock. So we can hear them running. So it was like cat and mouse. In like the management zone and the industry sector are separate. So we can hear them running. And then the control tower's going, yeah, they've just gone into industries. We run around the back, go through 3 gates. Yeah, no, they're back out in the MZ again. Okay, turn around back that way again. So that was like that for half an hour. Just backs and forth, cat and mouse, cat and mouse. We eventually got them doing a bit of a roof thing in industries. So they were hiding on the roof. We had GPs, we had 40 mil launchers, we had riot shields, all the dog squad were there, all the IAT were there, everything. Had all the police corralled around industries doing the perimeter sector. So there was a reasonable show of force at like 3:00 in the morning.
Jesus. That brings me to another question, something I just thought of.
Yep.
And this is experience I've had. Have you ever been pepper sprayed?
Oh, yeah. I think when I last checked, I'd had it 13 times.
Jesus. I've had it once. So we did, with my induction with St. John, we did half a day with TRG. And they gassed up a room and let us walk through the gas room. And that was quite an experience having that. But tell me about your experience, because you guys obviously, for us, we just walk through to experience what it's like, because back then we used to do our emergency medical dispatchers used to do like a joint induction with the paramedics, and they do it in case the paramedics have to respond something to police and they deploy the gas. They know what to expect. They know how to deal with it. They know what it's going to feel like, so it's going to be like a less of a shock. We don't get sprayed directly to the face, which I'm assuming that's what you guys get. So talk to me about that when that first happens to you.
So you'll get an MK4 and MK6, which are what you'll see corrections or police carry, deodorant-looking canisters. We'll do that. So, and again, it's all about functionality. Like you just said perfectly, it's so that you know that you're not going to die. This is what we used to get told. So people get sprayed, and some people, it's like the end of the world. They go into full-on panic mode. They're screaming and they're kicking off, and they might even get aggressive. I've seen people swear at and swing at their friends when they're sprayed, because all you do is go into fight or flight. And that's what it's designed to do. Like OC spray is designed to obviously inhibit your ability to see, like it's an involuntary muscular spasm of the eyes. The intense pain, as you would know, even just from that secondary aerolized transfer, can burn, but that directly on your skin, horrendous. Fall asleep at Bondi Beach for a day and see how you feel afterwards. That's what it is. Burns your airways as well, burns your nose, you're running like a tap, you've got spit and snot everywhere, you can't hear, and because obviously you've deprived yourself of that sensation of sight, you've increased that sensation of pain through the irritation. Then your hearing and sense of touch become heightened, but then you don't want to touch anything because you're burning. So you're just completely deprived. You might as well just throw someone into a bloody water tank and shut the top, because you've got no sensory input you can hear, and you don't know what's going on. That I've seen people have very bad reactions to it. I've seen people brush it off like it's nothing. I can't tell you who does better or not, but my first time, I hated it. I definitely hated it. Our scenario that we would play was the officers would spray each other, so you had to spray someone to be signed off, and you had to be sprayed to be signed off. So you took it in turns to do it throughout the day. And you'd get sprayed while you're holding on to like a dummy gun, dummy knife, or keys. You'd be sprayed, you're holding that. You'd usually just tuck it into like the waistband of your PT pants. And then after you're sprayed, you effectively have someone come at you for maybe 5 to 10 seconds to try and take it off you, try to retain it. And then you'd have baton strikes as well. So you'd have like a soft baton, training baton, and you'd have to do 10 strikes at a pad. So kind of to keep your mental awareness if someone's coming at you. You can't see anything, but you can hear and you'll verbalize. So even while you're burning, you're still yelling, get back, while someone tries to take your gear off you. So you're obviously keeping your hand out, pushing if required. And then you have a soft baton, which you'd be striking on a pad. You do 10 strikes on the pad just to sort of show that you've still got the ability to have the dexterity to hit and swing. Then obviously going to decontaminate. Down the track, I ended up getting into staff training. So I was a senior of staff training, at which point I would go in and do OC spray as well. A couple of riots, obviously, that I've been involved in, and a few assaults inside the prison where we've had to deploy chemical agents, OC. Corrections also use CS, though, which TRG use, which I don't think you would have been exposed to.
No, CS is the one we did because they gassed up the chamber. So they said one.
Oh, yeah, that'll kill you.
That's the one we did. So there was a difference because they said, I'm pretty sure OC spray is dealt with water. CS gas is air. So they had big fans set up for us.
Yep, exactly.
It was crazy because they gassed it up. We walked through And I mean, the couple of the TRG guys walked through with us, and they showed us like inside that they could, safely disarm their weapons and knew where everything was. And there was one girl in our intake. She was a intern paramedic, and it didn't affect her. And the TRG guys told us, like, there's one in so many thousands and, or tens of thousands of people that this doesn't affect. And, and we walked through and she's like, this is nothing. And the TRG guy didn't believe her. So he walked back through with her, stayed inside for like a good 20, 30 seconds.
Yep.
And they walked out and he's like, still disarming, showing us where everything is. And she's like, I'm fine.
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy to see, because they said although they've heard it doesn't affect some people, they've never actually seen anyone that has infected, and she was the first one.
And OC is very different to CS in the regards that you do actually have a total lethality time frame. OC will not kill you. It'll feel like it'll kill you, but it won't, unless you have some sort of severe underlying circumstance or it's something around the situation as you're sprayed, like you're at a height or driving a vehicle. That's how it could kill you. CS, for a standard size cell for a 2-up prisoner with one person inside, if you were to spray a single second burst of CS, total lethality is approximately 20 minutes. So they will die. There is no doubt about it. The way CS works, and that's why we didn't use it very frequently unless required, but just how it restricts the capacity to breathe. So, and that's what I remember. We do the same thing in the training cell, and I've done that far too many times. I've done it far too many times. Go into the training cell, shut the door, got the party pack, the big MK9s, the nice fun ones, stand in the cell with the masks on, and you just sit there and give it a nice good spray, and you watch it going up in the air, and it just falls down like, fairy dust. It's like Tinkerbell just flew over you.
It's like red color as well.
Yeah, and then it ends up landing on your skin, and you're like, oh yeah, that tingles a bit, that burns a bit. And you're like, all right, everyone, masks off. You take the mask off, and then it hits your eyes and you can't see. It hits your lungs, and you feel like someone's just grabbed your lungs and just squeezed, and you can't get a breath in.
Yep.
And we would do that, and we'd have all the masks off, and they'd make us talk, and where are you from? What do you do? What do you do before this? Where do you live? And everyone's there dying, trying to talk. It was good, but again, same thing. You learn to know that it's not going to will kill you, but it's not going to kill you immediately. You learn what the effects are, and we did. In the last couple of riots I've been involved in, CS has been brought out, but I wasn't around it immediately for its use. I was around for a lot of OC though. But it's that whole aspect of the exposure, as you've said with you guys doing with TRG, knowing that you can survive and function through it. And if required to, you can really push to get your job done. Because if that were to incapacitate you as well, then you've lost your advantage. So, corrections was all about using your tools to your advantage. If I can go hands-on with somebody, I'd rather do it after chemical agents are used, because then I have the advantage because I've been exposed to it. I know how I'll react. Hopefully they don't. So they're more worried about themselves than me grabbing them, putting them on the floor and handcuffing them. So tactical advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Can we talk about how you stay so resilient working in an environment in a prison day in, day out, especially for 6 years? You choosing going to that environment. A lot of people, that's the last place they want to end up working in that environment. Seeing the things and hearing the stories that you do, how do you stay so resilient? How do you keep your mental health so sharp?
I'd probably say two main things, which anybody, I don't know if anybody will agree with the first one, but dark humour, a lot of dark humour, and the lads you work with, the camaraderie. Absolutely. The dark humour was obviously, and it's a pretty standard one, like you get it across all the trades and all the forces as well, and it's just you make light of the dark things that you see or you hear. And it's almost like that reassociative method of saying, like you'll make a joke about murder or assault or or something like that, and like you see it all the time, and then you try to make these jokes or connections, and you say that to anybody in public, and they just look at you in disgust. But you're like, no, I'm sorry, I have to deal with this. These are the people and the things I do all day. So if I can make some sort of a bridged mental connection where this is funny, or it's not horrific, especially like, I'm a father. So when I had to deal with guys who had child sex offences, like that, morally and ethically for me, that was hard. So I had to kind of make a bridge in my mind where it'd remind me of a joke or something that someone said, something to distract me and give me a little bit of an endorphin kick or a positive boost to be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's that thing that joke that Ben said, that's funny as hell. That was about someone like him, instead of thinking that I want to hurt this guy. I'm not allowed to. That'd be me going to jail. So that dark humor, it's definitely frowned upon by the general public, but it is a huge aspect of resilience. And it's the same thing when you see all these self-help videos and books where they talk about, like, visualizing stuff and putting stuff into the world, and then how you associate your feelings and your thoughts, positive reinforcement and all that. So our positive reinforcement was telling jokes, being idiots, talking trash, but bringing all these dark subjects right out there. It's not that you don't talk about them. They become your primary subject. They become your bread and butter. You almost desensitize yourself, but you do it in a positive fashion. You're not coming to work and dragging your feet, dreading dealing with these guys. You come up with these funny stories and funny scenarios and funny jokes, and you almost make it palatable to talk about, because then when you're in the block, it's not that bad. It's that positive association. Same thing, like, when they talk about with, when you train a dog, it's better to give a dog a treat than it is to kick it. Same with, correctional officers. Don't kick us, give us a treat. We're more likely to do our job if we're happy. But
yeah, definitely dark humor has definitely got but you got to be careful. There's definitely time, place, and audience with that sort of stuff. And anyone out of the industry, out of any of these first responders, correction, military, it's sometimes going to be hard to grasp, but it is used by a lot of us to help us process what we see and what we hear and what we go through. And
definitely
a bit of positive spin.
I think that's one of the good parts about corrections too, though, before we move on from that. It was definitely because you're locked in the jail, so your audience is just you. So it is hard for, like, other guys like yourself. We are out more of a public aspect and there are more people around. You can't control who you're around. So that was probably our benefit with corrections. We were locked away from everyone. We didn't have any social media access or any phones. So there was almost no chance of anybody overhearing it that shouldn't overhear it.
Gotcha.
So we were lucky.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the last question I have is, do you have any advice for people that want to come in or aspire to be a corrections officer?
Probably say know why you're doing it. It's a good job, pays bloody well. I've never complained about it, but know why you're doing it. If you're just doing it for the paycheck, or if you're doing it as a stepping stone into, say, the police or federal, or to some other kind of training, like if that's all you're doing it for, maybe rethink it, because it will take a toll on you if you let it, or you'll burn out and you'll pull your own pin. It's definitely one of those things where morals and ethics and a sense of justice are a benefit, but you have to moderate it. So if you want to do the right thing, if you really want a job where you're going to do something for the community, keep people safe, attempt to make a change, as I've said, it's very hard to do with a limited time frame. But if you want to actually try and impart some sort of impression on people that some of these prisoners have never seen a positive role model, they've never seen anybody do the right thing. So you might be that person for somebody. You might only do it once. Like, I think I might have 2 or 3 people I could probably say over the 6 years that have actually had a positive outcome because of mine and other people's interactions directly. But that's 2 or 3 people more than would have been if I hadn't been there.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great way to look at it, man. And I guess it's important to know that they can make a positive impact. It may only be for a little while, but you might create that little spark within them that they can do better.
And if you wanted to get in a job like that too, and like we spoke about the resilience before, but it's very similar to your military and your police and your enforcement agencies, where that camaraderie you get is second to none. Like the riots I talked about, death in custody, all the assaults and incidences I've had, very rarely have I ever questioned, would someone come and assist or help or be there? Very rarely. You build relationships and friendships and bonds with these lads where you've got a lot of those 3 o'clock lads. And I don't know if everyone's heard the term on the other podcast, but you've got like the people you can ring at, say, 6 o'clock, and if you ring them after 6, they're not going to answer, but then you ring the guy at 3 a.m. in the morning and he'll answer. Every one of the lads that I worked with have been 3 o'clock lads. And I've had phone calls, I've made phone calls, even while I was out of town recently, the guys that I previously worked with that were ringing, or I needed help and I rang them, they'll always answer. If not, they'll ring you straight back. But it's one of those things of, if you're going to go into a cell to get somebody out, or you're about to go into a riot, you look left and right and people aren't scared. They're smiling. And it's the weirdest thing, because they're happy to be with the guys they're with. It's not that they're happy that they're about to go into a riot. you're there and you're like, well, everyone's here. I'm with my friends. These are the people I trust. I like these people. These are my family. And it's in those moments where all the other crap you deal with just falls away. It's amazing. You stand there and you're like, these people I would go to hell and back with, and I'm about to. And that is probably one of the aspects I've very much enjoyed about being a correctional officer, having that trust in these people, knowing that no matter what happened, they would put 110% of their heart and soul into coming on board and helping me. And I think that's a big thing with the resilience, massive thing. The mental health is obviously an issue for everybody in law enforcement, but corrections, people helping each other, watching out for each other, knowing each other, because we're locked inside. That's the unique aspect. You don't get Facebook, you don't get YouTube, you don't get a phone. You have to talk.
You get each other.
12 hours in a room with someone that you don't like is going to suck. So you have to make friends with everybody. You have to be good with everybody. So that's an aspect that I very much miss, but also a skill that I'm very grateful that I gained. The ability to talk to people, trust people, and build those bonds and connections. And it goes above friendship, and it's probably even further than family. Yeah, it's definitely an awesome aspect.
Have you seen that movie with Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner? I think it's called The Town. I've got a little clip of it I'm going to show you. Yep. So I'll play it through here so everyone can hear.
I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. You can never ask me about it later, and we're going to hurt some people. Whose car are we going to take?
You know, and that's the 3 o'clock people that you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The friends that you can rely on if you're going through a hard time, or, you know, you need a chat at 3 o'clock in the morning. You can just get on the phone, ring them. You know they're going to pick up. You know they're going to be there for you, and they know that you're going to be there for them as well. And that's hard to find outside of these industries that we're in.
Yep, definitely. Then I've had conversations almost identical to that at work too. I've had to go and deal with somebody, or we know someone's kicking off in a cell, or something's happening. We've got to deal with it. And I've walked in and I've gone, all right, I need to get a lad out. Who's coming? And I don't say anything else, but they know from how I'm talking that it's going to be something serious. And it's just like, all right, who is it? There's no questions like, oh, what have we got to do? Or is it dangerous or nothing? No one pays any regard to their safety. They're like, all right, where are we going? Do I need gas? The shield? They're just good to go. They're good to go. It's just, you got each other's back. So,
that's really good to hear that there's that camaraderie in there as well, because you need it in these industries, as we said. Yeah. I think that's it, man. Sam, thank you so much for coming on, mate. I think that gives a really, really good insight to people of what, you know, a day in the life of a correction officer is, you know, the things that you guys go through, and if they're interested in the role, kind of what to expect. And it's really positive that you can make such a positive difference in the lives of these people that, you know, are incarcerated, that you can make a positive influence on these people as well. And also to raise, I guess, a little bit of awareness about, you know, the people that are in there they're humans just like the rest of us. Yeah, there's some bad dudes, but there's some people that are in there because of circumstance, or in there because of culture, or in there because of necessity, because they can't do anything else. You know, not everyone in these systems is, going to be, I guess, a problem to society or threat to society. You know what I mean? I think it's important to raise that awareness as well. So I appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you. I think it was awesome.
Thank you for tuning into the Priority Zero podcast. We greatly appreciate your dedicated listenership. If you are interested in being featured as a guest on our show, we welcome you to reach out to us through our official channels on Facebook or Instagram. Alternatively, you can contact us via email at contact@priorityzero.com.au. We value your support in helping us spread these compelling stories to a wider audience. Kindly consider liking and sharing these episodes, as it plays a crucial role in our mission to reach as many people as possible.